This is really for everyone, but it relates to something that you said in your lecture, Ken. You said that singing in harmony was something of a Christian phenomenon. As we reflect the Trinity, we sing in harmony together. And the question is, what about in the worship service, especially related to, Dr. Jordan, you've said that in the worship service...
Why?
That in the worship service, that we ought to sing with one voice, going to the Levitical command that the Levites were to direct the people and singing in one voice. So ought we to be singing in four-part harmony in the liturgical service? Just a quick question.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yes or no question?
Yes. No, I've tried to point out in years past that the early church believed that you should sing in unison because of that phrase in Chronicles, that the people sang with one voice. And really before musical notation and writing down of scores, it's pretty common to sing only in unison because that's how people learn by imitation. After the Reformation, harmonized singing comes in with hymns and psalms, not the Genevan Psalms, which were written to be sung without any accompaniment at all in church. Outside of church, you have Gudemel writing in parts for people to sing at home, but it's very slow because all of a sudden he's got 16th notes going, and you cannot sing very rapidly if you're doing that. So maybe one or two stanzas as people sit around the table with their part books. But in church it was unison, or unison with an organ accompaniment. In Scotland and in the English traditions, you began to have a cappella singing in parts. I have no problem if people want to sing in parts when they're singing hymns. I don't think it's a sin. I don't think it's a premium, though. And worship music, since it's chanted, is not done in parts. You don't sing in parts usually. Well, you can with Anglican chant. If you've got Anglican chant, Gloria in Excelsis, like Scottish chant, you can sing parts there. But it's normally the tradition of the church has been unison singing because it pulls everybody together. I think that's worth making that point without saying, oh, it's a sin if you can read music and you want to sing the tenor line. Don't sing so loud that you make it impossible for everybody else to sing the melody, though.
I think to sing with one voice,
I don't think that actually probably
means, yeah, and it can mean, and I think, I'm a choir director, and I've got 4, 5, 6-part pieces sometimes. We sang an 8-part piece when I had 8 people there, but the biggest challenge for us is to sing as one voice, and we spend a lot of time rehearsing so that we don't sound like 4 or 5 or 6 individuals, but we sound like we're singing in one voice. Even if you had, so I think that to figure out how do you achieve musical unity, I think you can achieve a sense of musical unity with multiple lines. And I think that's part of what is, I think the way to do that, I think it took the church and took composers time to figure out how that could be done so that it wasn't, and I think the glory of Renaissance polyphony particularly is the idea that it does have a kind of cohesion and coherence that has an essential unity with all of the diversity. And that's why I think it has a kind of Trinitarian capacity, because it can both be one and many.
I would say that singing in harmony in a worship service is a distinctively Christian practice, particularly when I'm doing it. And at weddings, I tell when we sing the hymn, I turn my mic down. Don't want everybody to feel bad for whatever reason. I found what Ken said the other night, that harmony is an embodied an embodiment of love, a metaphor of love, or an enacted metaphor of love, I find that compelling. I think that there are few things in the world that I think better picture a group of people loving each other than people picking up different parts and having the parts be complementary and blending together. And it's easy. One of the marriage counseling metaphors I use is the marriage where there's an insistence on singing in unison, where we want the husband and the wife to sing the same thing instead of living harmoniously, where your note is completely different from your note and it sounds good together. So if it's easier to sing unison, which means that it's less challenging, if you attempt to sing a part and you miss, heads are turning, people who did that. But if you sing a part and you hit your note and everybody's hitting their pitch, the effect is spectacular, and it loves the other. It's a way of drawing attention. It's a way of you doing something distinctive that makes the other person look good.
Right, absolutely.
It's a way of glorifying somebody else. Yeah. And I don't know how there's a more Christian way of self-effacing accomplishment, where you accomplish and somebody else is glorified. And I just think it's a good thing. The other thing that I would add is that if we go back in church history, you lose more than just polyphony. You lose instruments. You lose all kinds of things. And I believe the early church was the church in its toddlerhood. And I'm a postmillennialist, and I think worship 50 years before the eschaton is going to be much more rich and much more textured and much more available to regular folks, where when people have grown up singing in parts and it's just part of their culture, I think that's a cultural advance over people who can barely. In the colonial period, they used to have singing masters who would go around, and one of the big controversies in colonial America was the singing masters trying to get everybody to sing the same note at the same time. Because everybody then wanted to sing at their own tempo, right? I want to sing this song at my pace, and the singing masters who tried to get you to sing together were quenching the spirit. Well, I think we're growing up.
If I could quickly add one other thing, and that is, if you're singing in parts attentively and lovingly, you have to listen to the other person a lot more. If everybody's singing in unison, you don't have to listen to the other person much. If you're singing in parts, it actually forces you to listen to everyone else, because you have to figure out, you can't understand your part. And I'm often telling, there's one of my choir members, I'm always telling, you got to listen to everybody. You can't understand your part unless you understand the other parts. And sometimes for a rehearsal, we will all sing the alto line of a work, or then we'll all sing the bass line of a work, so that we can understand all the parts together. I'm reminded of a line, Roger Scruton, essay he wrote once about, and he's talking about how a lot of modern dance, in a lot of modern social dancing, people dance at each other instead of with each other. And take that. It's like dance as martial art, and how dancing should really be, you're dancing with someone. And I think similarly in singing, to sing with someone and not just at someone is useful. So.
Peter wants to challenge you to a dance-off.
This isn't addressing the question directly, but just a word from the seeker-friendly tradition. I do think that there's a pastoral problem and a judgment call to make about the level of difficulty of somebody integrating into the musical culture of a church, and I think we need to be aware of that, and particularly aware, given the failures of music education that Ken has emphasized over the last few years. People coming into a church that's singing at a very high level, or that's just really daunting, and that we need to find ways. I'm not suggesting that we be sloppy or seek mediocrity, but we have to find ways to attract people to that and then integrate them into it. And I guess part of it would be, I think, Ken, you make the distinction in your book between high-end folk art. And it seems to me like liturgical music is not the same as sacred concert music, and something more like folk level, which can be well-crafted, beautiful, artistic, but is not doesn't require high levels of training and so on. So that just raise those pastoral issues.
The seeker, I was thinking as we're talking about this, a friend of mine was a Mennonite pastor back in Powhatan County, Virginia. We used to visit his church every few months, and a cappella service, and all the families were a church with large families, and they all knew how to sing in parts. And it was always refreshing to us. And we actually felt really welcome there because we felt, well, these are people who are together. They have a sense of, had a sense of unity there. Again, it was, more, you would say, a kind of more folk tradition in a way. But I've always thought one of my peeves about the seeker-friendly movement is that
Tradition, I think, is
tradition, yeah. Is that it seems to suggest, or at least the disciplines of it seem to suggest that we can't be anybody. That to come into a church means to come into an undefined entity where everyone is seeking. And it seems to me that what a seeker wants is some place to be. And so if we're going to practice hospitality, we have to be something to practice that hospitality. It doesn't mean it has to be so alien as to be be entirely exclusive. Anyway.